Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The Gospel of the Lord. A priest friend of mine got the Greek word doulos tattooed on his wrist when he was ordained. And I'm sure that over the years a few people saw the tattoo and judged my friend as snobbish or elitist for having a Greek word tattooed on his all-American skin. Perhaps someone actually had the nerve to tell him that to his face. And if so, I would love to see the look on their face when he explains that the word means slave, and that it summarizes his understanding of his role as a priest. The word reminds and encourages him to stay faithful to that essence and purpose of unconditional service in a world full of distraction and temptation. In its way, that small patch of ink keeps my friend accountable. For if we ever failed to live up to its ideal, the tattoo would take on a pointed irony, and he would have no one to blame but himself. While I have no tattoos, but I take a keen interest in the difference between a label and an essence. Halloween is coming up, and that gives everyone a golden opportunity to try on a new label. If you've never dressed as a priest on Halloween, I recommend it, and if you're up for it, I'll loan you the garb. But the rest of the year, wearing a label that is not honest to who we truly are is not so entertaining. Sometimes it's just embarrassing, like claiming you're a fan of a trendy author or artist and then being unable to answer any question about their work. Other times, it's quite devastating, like the time someone I loved wrote me a letter saying she loved me, when it would have been more accurate if she had written, "I've been seeing someone else for a while now." I'm glad someone finds that funny. That was years ago, and I've moved on, obviously, and I do still believe in love. But I learned the hard way that just because someone labels themselves as something doesn't mean that they are that thing. Jesus is authentically love, and he teaches his followers that lesson in a compassionate way. James and John, 2 of his very closest disciples, came to him seeking a label. Jesus offered them something much greater, an essence and a purpose. They asked him to do them a favor without saying what it was, always a bad sign. And yet I can't condemn them, because their desire for places of honor is phrased in terms of their relationship to Jesus. And their request comes out of an assumption of Jesus' ultimate victory and his sovereignty. So their hearts are in the right place, and their zeal is commendable. But to sit at Jesus' right hand or at his left, to hold a position of glory, is an awful lot like a title or a label or a ribbon. What good is a ribbon if you didn't enter the race? What good is a diploma if you didn't learn anything? Jesus reminds them that following him requires not a title, but a deep commitment, a willingness to sacrifice everything one has, even our lives. Accepting the label of Christian means putting Jesus first, always. To their enduring credit, James and John were not put off by Jesus' invitation to take part in the substance of discipleship. They affirmed, "We are able." 3 simple words that never fail to inspire me. Those words indicated a choice that redefined who James and John were, and so we call them saints. They may have begun by asking Jesus to do whatever they asked, but they grew quickly into agreeing to do whatever Jesus asks. Sometimes people push back against the notion that our choices and not our labels make us who we are. Such resistance is understandable. Labels are easy to control, and we can easily predict which one society will reward. But the freedom to choose who we are, deep down, and the responsibility that comes with that freedom are so vast and powerful as to be bewildering, perhaps even terrifying. And as James and John discovered, we can't always predict the consequences of our choices. It's true that every person's circumstances have a powerful effect on their life. It's important to understand why people do what they do, but it's at least as important to honor those who make life-giving choices in the face of adversity. History and hagiography incessantly remind us that everyone is capable of tremendous courage and generosity. A hero lives in every human heart because we all are made in the image of God. Difficult circumstances do not excuse wickedness, but they do magnify compassion into nobility. Now is the season when every family in our church is asked to consider what level of support we will make to St. John's in the coming year. Each of us has to decide if the word Christian is just a label we wear or a fair and honest description of who we are at our core. Whether our relationship with Jesus is something we accommodate, or whether everything else in our lives must move in order to make room for Jesus, even to the point of sacrifice. Every year I am inspired by the commitment our response to this call represents. I'm inspired by the invisible decisions that our stewardship choices become the tangible evidence of. Some of our families who have the least give the most relative to what they have, and the breadth and depth of that commitment is far more inspirational than any number. Our campaign to renew our covenant creates an opportunity for all of us to choose and express who we are deep down, to stake out for ourselves what we mean when we say we support St. John's and the gospel mission that plays out here every week. This process creates a level playing field in a congregation where, as always, some have more than others. Regardless of what any of us has to work with, each of us knows whether our pledge represents a generous, sacrificial commitment. In this way, we all get another chance every year to define ourselves, to express for ourselves what is most important. Thus, we also get the chance to discover, as James and John did, that only commitment brings the peace wherein joy can flourish. I hope and pray that all of us will follow the example of those who heard the call of the gospel and answered, "We are able." Amen.